Have you ever wondered what it takes to survive a winter in the mountains before modern technology? I mean, really survive. Not just with a cozy fireplace, but with a system of survival that was honed over centuries of trial and error. Think about it. Biting wind, feet of snow, and temperatures that could freeze the marrow in your bones. For people living in these harsh environments, staying warm wasn't a luxury. It was the difference between life and death. Today, we're going on a journey to uncover the secrets of mountain heating. We're going to explore the ingenious methods, the ancient wisdom, and the sheer effort that went into keeping a home warm when the world outside was a frozen wasteland. This isn't just a story about fire. It's a story about thermal mass, about fuel selection, and about the incredible engineering that went into a mountain home. We'll look at the silent science of stone, the unforgiving art of woodcutting, and the clever ways people moved heat from a central hearth to every corner of their dwelling. So, grab a warm drink, get comfortable, and let's dive into the fascinating history of how our ancestors conquered the cold. This is the ultimate guide to mountain heating, from the ground up. The silent power of stone, masonry, and thermal dynamics. When you think of a mountain home, you probably picture a stone fireplace. But these weren't just for aesthetics. They were the heart of the home, a masterpiece of thermal engineering built from the very earth they stood on. The secret lies in a concept called thermal mass. Thermal mass is the ability of a material to absorb, store, and release heat slowly. Stone, particularly dense rock like granite and basalt, is fantastic at this. A massive stone fireplace or hearth isn't just radiating heat from the fire directly. It's absorbing a tremendous amount of energy while the fire burns. Once the flames die down, the stone continues to release that stored heat for hours, even days, acting like a giant natural battery. Imagine a fireplace made of stacked stones. The masons who built these were artisans and scientists rolled into one. They understood that the greater the mass of the stone structure, the more heat it could hold. They would often build these structures with an immense footprint, sometimes extending into the walls themselves, creating a warm core that permeated the entire house. This principle was also used in the floors. Many mountain homes had stone or packed earth floors directly in front of the hearth. As the fire burned, the floor would warm up, and just like the fireplace itself, it would slowly release that heat, providing a comfortable, radiant warmth from below. The entire structure was a thermal engine, designed to capture and hold every single calorie of heat. This wasn't just a matter of building big. The type of stone mattered. Porous stones like sandstone would crack and crumble under repeated heating and cooling cycles. Masons sought out dense, tough stone, often sourced directly from the mountain itself, which could withstand the extreme temperatures. The mortar used to bind the stones was also a critical component, needing to be flexible enough to handle the expansion and contraction without failing. The chimney was another marvel. While its primary purpose was to vent smoke, its design was often a critical part of the heating system. Sometimes, a wider, less restrictive chimney was used to allow for more of the heat to radiate back into the room before escaping. The goal was always the same: keep as much heat in the house as possible. The science of mountain wood. A guide to fuel. A fire is only as good as the fuel you feed it. In the mountains, the choice of wood wasn't just about what was available. It was a complex science of moisture, density, and burn characteristics. This was the difference between a roaring fire that heated the home and a smoky, inefficient mess that just made the inhabitants cough. Hardwood versus softwood. The first and most important distinction was between hardwoods and softwoods. Softwoods like pine and spruce were abundant. They were easier to cut and lighter to transport. They caught fire quickly and burned hot and fast. This made them excellent for starting a fire or for a quick burst of warmth. However, they produced a lot of smoke and creosote, a tar-like substance that builds up in chimneys and can cause dangerous fires. They also burned out quickly, meaning you had to constantly feed the fire. Hardwoods, like oak, maple, and cherry, were the gold standard. They were denser and heavier, meaning they had more stored energy per log. They burned slower, hotter, and with less smoke and creosote. A fire fueled by hardwood could last for hours, providing a steady, reliable source of heat overnight. Cutting and splitting hardwood was a back-breaking task, but the long-term benefits were undeniable. A single log of seasoned oak could provide as much heat as several logs of pine. The art of seasoning. Once the wood was cut, the work was far from over. The most critical step was seasoning the wood. This meant drying it out, often for a full year or more. Green, unseasoned wood contains a high percentage of water. When you burn it, a significant portion of the energy goes into boiling this water away before the wood can even start to burn. This results in a weak, smoky fire and wasted energy. Seasoned wood, on the other hand, had a low moisture content. It would catch fire easily, burn hotter, and produce less smoke. The best way to season wood was to split it into manageable sizes, stack it in a way that allowed for maximum airflow, and store it under a roof or a tarp to protect it from rain and snow. The sound of seasoned wood was a crisp, hollow thud, a stark contrast to the dull thud of green wood. Fuel selection and strategy. A mountain family would often use a strategic mix of woods. They would use softwood kindling to start the fire, then add larger pieces of seasoned hardwood to build a long-lasting coal bed. For the final fire of the night, they might add a massive, dense log known as a backlog, which would slowly smolder and provide warmth until morning. The type of wood also dictated how it was processed. Hardwoods were split with heavy mauls, while softwoods might be cut with a simple axe. The size of the logs was also important. Smaller logs would burn faster, while larger ones would last longer. It was a constant dance of balancing heat output with fuel consumption, a finely tuned system of survival, airflow, and ingenuity. The path of heat. A central fire is great, but what about the rest of the house? Mountain dwellers developed clever, often simple ways to move that heat from the hearth to the outer rooms. This wasn't about forced air systems. It was about understanding the natural principles of convection and radiation. Convection. The natural flow of warmth. The most basic principle was convection. Hot air rises. As the fire heated the air around the hearth, that air would rise and spread across the ceiling. As it cooled, it would sink, creating a natural circulation loop. Cleverly designed homes would have open floor plans or strategic openings to allow this warm air to flow freely. But sometimes, a more deliberate approach was needed. People would use vents or small openings high on a wall to allow warm air from the main room to flow into a bedroom or a less used space. The cooler air from that room would then sink and return to the main room near the floor, where it would be warmed again. Radiant heat and strategic placement. Radiant heat was another key component. As we discussed, the massive stone hearth wasn't just heating the air, it was radiating heat in all directions. By building benches or beds directly against the stone wall of the chimney or hearth, people could absorb that direct warmth. This was especially critical for sleeping areas, where a cold stone wall could quickly become a source of discomfort. Sometimes the chimney itself was designed to be a heat radiator. A large exposed chimney passing through the upper floors of a home could provide passive heating to the rooms it passed through. This was a simple but effective way to get more use out of the heat that would have otherwise been lost. The clever use of ovens. Many mountain hearths incorporated a bread oven into their design. This wasn't just for baking. The oven would be a stone-lined cavity built into the hearth structure. When a fire was built inside to heat it for baking, the stone would absorb a huge amount of heat. Even after the baking was done, the massive hot stone of the oven would radiate warmth for hours, contributing to the overall heating of the home. This was a classic example of multi-purpose design, where one task contributed to another. The metal revolution. Stoves and coal. For centuries, the open hearth was the only option. But in the 18th and 19th centuries, a new technology began to revolutionize mountain heating: the wood stove. The wood stove was a game changer. Unlike an open hearth, which lost a significant amount of heat up the chimney, a wood stove was an enclosed metal box. It was far more efficient because it radiated heat from all of its surfaces, not just the front. The fire was contained, allowing for better control of the burn and less wasted heat. Early wood stoves were simple cast iron boxes. Over time, they became more sophisticated, with features like dampers to control airflow and flues to direct the smoke. A small fire in a wood stove could heat a room more effectively than a much larger fire in an open hearth. The move to wood stoves also coincided with the rise of coal as a fuel source. While wood was abundant in most mountain regions, coal offered a different kind of heat. It was far denser than wood, meaning it had more energy per pound. It burned longer and hotter than even the best hardwood. However, coal presented its own challenges. It produced more toxic fumes, requiring a well-sealed stove and a good chimney. It also left behind ash that needed to be cleaned out regularly. But for those who had access to it, coal provided a level of sustained heat that was difficult to match with wood alone. The combination of the efficient wood stove and the energy-dense coal created a new era of comfort in mountain homes. No longer was a roaring fire a constant necessity. A small, well-tended stove could keep a home warm for hours on end, freeing up time and effort for other tasks. The winter's crucible. Safety and maintenance mountain heating was not a set-it-and-forget-it system. It was a daily, even hourly, commitment that required vigilance and a deep understanding of the equipment. A small mistake could have catastrophic consequences. Chimney and hearth maintenance. The most common and dangerous threat was a chimney fire. As we mentioned, burning softwood produced creosote, a highly flammable tar. Over time, this substance would build up on the inside walls of the chimney flue. A hot fire could ignite this creosote, leading to a roaring inferno inside the chimney that could spread to the rest of the house. To prevent this, chimneys needed to be cleaned regularly. This was a dirty, difficult job, often done with a brush on a long rope. The sound of a chimney sweep working was a common one in mountain communities. The hearth itself also required maintenance. The stone and mortar could crack over time due to repeated heating and cooling. These cracks needed to be patched to prevent heat loss and to ensure the structural integrity of the fireplace. The dangers of carbon monoxide. With the advent of enclosed stoves, a new danger emerged: carbon monoxide poisoning. This odorless, colorless gas is a byproduct of incomplete combustion. A poorly ventilated stove or a blocked flue could allow this gas to build up inside the home, leading to sickness or even death. To combat this, people learned to recognize the signs of a poorly functioning stove, such as a smoky smell or a fire that struggled to burn. They also ensured that their homes had some form of ventilation, even if it was just a crack in a window, to allow fresh air to circulate. Firewood and storage. The firewood itself also posed a danger. Wet, moldy wood could create a home for insects and rot. Improperly stacked wood could fall, causing injury. The storage of the wood was also a factor. Storing wood too close to the home could increase the risk of fire, but storing it too far away meant a treacherous trip through the snow to get more fuel. A well-designed woodshed was a critical part of a mountain home. The barrier against the blizzard, insulation and weatherproofing. Heating the home was only one side of the coin. The other was keeping the cold out. Without proper insulation and weatherproofing, a mountain home would be a sieve, losing heat as quickly as it was generated. The wall is the first line of defense. The walls of a mountain home were often incredibly thick, whether they were made of logs, stone, or a combination of both. This thickness was a natural form of insulation. A thick stone wall, for example, had a high thermal mass that not only absorbed heat from the inside, but also prevented the cold from penetrating from the outside. But a simple wall wasn't enough. The gaps between the logs or stones needed to be filled. This was often done with a mixture of mud, clay, and straw, a process known as chinking. This material would be pressed into every crack and crevice, creating a surprisingly effective barrier against the wind and cold. Windows and doors. The weak links. Windows and doors were the weakest points in the thermal defense of a home. Single-paned glass was the norm, and it was a terrible insulator. To combat this, people would often use heavy shutters or blankets to cover windows at night. The doors were often made of thick, heavy wood and sealed with some form of weather stripping, often made of leather or cloth. But even then, a draft was a constant reality. Many homes had a small entry room or vestibule, a kind of airlock that prevented a blast of cold air from entering the main living space every time the door was opened. The roof and the floor. The roof was another critical area. A well-built roof was more than just a barrier to rain and snow. It was a blanket of insulation. Sod roofs, for example, were a common type of insulation, where a layer of grass and dirt was grown on top of the roof structure. This provided a thick, natural layer of insulation that kept the heat in and the cold out. The floor was often another source of cold. A simple wooden floor with a crawl space beneath it could be a massive heat sink. To combat this, people would pack the crawl space with straw, sawdust, or other insulating materials. A thick rug or a mat made of animal hides was a common addition to the floor, providing a layer of insulation and comfort. The fuel economy. The true cost of comfort. Heating a mountain home wasn't just a matter of science and engineering, it was a matter of sheer effort. The amount of wood it took to keep a family warm through a single winter was staggering. A winter's worth of wood. To get a sense of the scale, a single cord of wood is a stack measuring 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, and 8 feet long. A typical modern home might burn 2 or 3 cords of wood in a winter. For a traditional mountain home, with less insulation and an open hearth, that number could be much higher, often 5 to 10 cords or more. Cutting, splitting, and stacking that much wood was an immense task. It was a job that started in the spring and continued through the fall, often a full-time occupation for one or more members of the family. The sound of an axe splitting wood was a constant soundtrack to mountain life, the value of every log. This immense effort meant that every single piece of wood was a precious resource. It was never wasted. People would burn every scrap, every twig, and every splinter. Nothing was left behind. The ashes from the fire were also used for a variety of purposes, from fertilizing gardens to making soap. The logistics of getting the wood to the house were also a major undertaking. Often, the wood was cut in a distant forest and had to be hauled back by horse, sled, or on the backs of people themselves. A well-stocked woodshed was a sign of a family's resilience and preparation. The ultimate test. The fuel economy of a mountain home was the ultimate test of a family's ability to survive. Miscalculate, and you could run out of wood in the middle of a blizzard. Fail to properly season your wood, and you would waste precious energy. This was a system where every decision had a real and immediate consequence. And there you have it, the incredible story of mountain heating. It's a story that goes far beyond a simple fire. It's a tale of ingenious engineering, of backbreaking labor, and of a deep connection to the natural world. It shows us that survival isn't just about enduring. It's about innovating, adapting, and understanding the world around us. The next time you see a massive stone fireplace, take a moment to appreciate the centuries of wisdom and effort that went into its construction. It's not just a place to build a fire, it's a testament to human ingenuity. What did you find most fascinating about mountain heating? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.